They called her Shadow Walker, not as praise, but as a joke. Her name whispered in barracks to mark someone who didn't belong. Marine Corporal Aria Monroe had carried that insult for 8 months, dismissed in briefings, mocked on the range, quietly pushed aside in every mission. To most of her unit, she was little more than background noise, a placeholder soldier waiting to wash out. But war has a way of flipping tables. When 22 American operators were surrounded by nearly 200 fighters in the Korval Highlands, every trained sniper was either dead or pinned. Ammunition dwindled. Their perimeter shrank with each burst of enemy fire. And someone half desperate, half sneering, remembered the woman they had ignored all along. What happened next would be measured in minutes and bullets etched into classified reports the world would never see. Hey soldiers, sound off where are you watching from. Subscribe now. Stay locked in for upcoming missions. The mountains howled with icy wind, carrying the echo of machine gun fire across jagged cliffs. Blood streaked the snow. Men pressed their backs to broken stone, searching for escape routes that didn't exist. "This is it," one SEAL muttered, voice raw. "No air support coming. We're already ghosts." Then silence shattered. A rifle cracked from above. One insurgent fell before he even knew he'd been targeted. Heads turned, eyes widened, and from the chaos emerged the last person they expected. Aria Monroe, 28, raven black hair tied in a regulation bun, a compact frame built more for endurance than brute force. Yet in her hands rested the Barrett M107, a weapon many swore she could never even lift. Her craft hadn't been born in classrooms. It had been forged in the Colorado Rockies, hunting elk at 10,000 feet with her grandfather. Victor Monroe, a man who taught her to treat patience as a weapon sharper than steel and to read the wind as if it were law. By the time she enlisted, her dream was simple: become a sniper, but her unit had other plans. That rifle's too heavy. Monroe, stick to comms, supply runs, leave the real work to real soldiers. That's how Shadow Walker was born. Not a hunter in the dark, but a shadow trailing behind men who never believed she could stand beside them. Until now. Because in the valley below, death was closing in and their only chance was the woman they had already written off. At the rifle range, Corporal Aria Monroe treated every shot like surgery. She adjusted her scope with measured care, her breathing steady, her hands calm. The men around her treated it like a carnival game. They fired in bursts, smirking, calling her sweetheart, pretending to aim at satellites. She never answered. The steel plates ringing at the far end of the range spoke loudly enough, but in the briefing room, accuracy meant nothing. When she suggested using the Eastern Ridge as overwatch, the room erupted with laughter. "That climb would kill you before the enemy even saw you." Someone shouted. Staff Sergeant Kyle Mercer shut it down with a smirk. "Shadow Walker stays in the rear." "That's final." The words clung to her like shackles. Yet night after night, while her teammates swapped stories by the fire, Aria slipped away to the training ground. She lay prone in the cold dirt, the Barrett steady on its bipod. She slowed her pulse until it matched her breath. She drilled trigger pulls so smooth they vanished into silence. She sketched ballistic equations until her notebook was thick with calculations. Her grandfather's voice hovered with every shot he hit her. "You don't get many chances in life, but the ones you do make them count for everything." Each insult forged her patience harder. Like steel tempered in fire, she was becoming something none of them expected. Then came the ambush. What should have been a clean 25-minute extraction collapsed into a trap. An entire company of insurgents had been waiting. The SEALs broke into 4 fire groups, scrambling for cover in abandoned radar towers and rubble. But the enemy pressed from every angle. Alpha pinned. Bravo hammered from the ridge. Charlie swarmed with RPG fire. Radio chatter dissolved into panic. Mercer's voice cracked through the static bass. "This is Viper 7. We're surrounded. Ammo nearly gone. Request immediate evac." The reply shattered hope. Negative. Viper 7. Weather prevents air support. You're on your own until dawn. Dawn was 8 hours away. 8 hours they wouldn't survive. Aria sat with the comms gear, her Barrett across her knees, listening to her teammates unravel. She did the math, 22 against 180. Entrenched, coordinated. It wasn't a fight. It was a countdown. One soldier whispered what they all knew. "We won't last an hour." Inside Aria, a storm built. Obey orders and watch them die, or break every rule and climb the ridge no one believed in. Her hand closed around the rifle's grip. The shadow was about to step into the fire. If she stayed in the rear, she would die listening to her team's voices fade into static one by one. If she broke orders, she would gamble everything: her career, her life, her unit's trust on a plan no one believed in. Fear surged first. What if her shots missed? What if enemy snipers spotted her before she could even steady her scope? What if she made everything worse? Doubts came in crashing waves. But beneath the fear was something hotter, sharper: anger. Every laugh at her expense, every sneer that branded her as less than a soldier, every time they called her Shadow Walker as if it meant failure. Her grandfather's words cut through the chaos like a lifeline. "When everyone says it's over, Nieta, that's when your shot matters most." Resolve solidified. She pressed the radio once. Communications maintaining position. She reported, knowing the lie would buy her minutes. Then she rose, slinging the Barrett across her back, stuffing spare magazines and her rangefinder into her pack. The ridge loomed steep, jagged, merciless. Exactly what they had mocked her for suggesting. Now it was her only path. The climb punished every inch of her. Rocks split her palms. Her knees slammed into unyielding stone. 40 pounds of rifle and gear dragged against her shoulders with each brutal step. The wind screamed through the Korval Highlands, carrying the desperate rattle of gunfire below. Every meter upward was a question: was she climbing toward salvation or only toward futility? But Aria had studied this terrain. She remembered every contour, every fold in the rock, every blind spot in enemy sightlines. She moved with grim focus, timing her ascents with bursts of gunfire so the chaos below masked her movement. The firefight intensified. Automatic weapons thundered, RPGs cracked stone into shrapnel. Martinez's voice broke through her earpiece. "All units, prepare for final, defensive positions. We're almost out of options." Aria's lungs burned as she crested the final rise. She slid prone behind a wall of granite, chest heaving, the ridge opening before her like a command seat over the battlefield. Through her scope, the valley transformed. No longer chaos, now a deadly chessboard. Every machine gun nest, every muzzle flash, every line of fire cutting into her team came into sharp focus. For the first time, she wasn't dismissed. She wasn't a shadow. She was in position. Her finger tightened near the trigger, and the next heartbeat would decide whether 22 men lived or died from her perch. The battlefield unfolded like a grim puzzle. Every enemy position, every muzzle flash, every hidden angle became visible from above. What had looked hopeless at ground level now revealed its flaws. The insurgents had numbers, firepower, terrain, but they hadn't accounted for her. Aria Monroe had been invisible her whole career, dismissed, overlooked. Now invisibility was her greatest weapon. Her gloved finger curled around the trigger. She whispered her grandfather's mantra, "Make it count." The rifle roared. The machine gun nest, tearing Alpha Team apart, fell silent instantly, its gunner collapsing mid-burst. The echo rolled through the valley like thunder. freezing the fight. Martinez ducked behind broken stone, then lifted his head in disbelief. Who the hell fired that? Another crack split the air. Then another, each shot carved with surgical precision, dropping threats one by one. It wasn't only her accuracy that stunned them, it was her position. She had scaled a rock face deemed impossible, hauling gear that should have broken her, and established a vantage with perfect lines of sight. And she never stayed still after every shot. She shifted, sliding behind boulders, firing from fresh angles, denying counter-snipers a chance to pin her down. She moved like a phantom born from rock and shadow, vanishing between strikes. To the fighters below, it was as if the mountain itself had come alive. Her voice cut across the radio, calm and precise. Guardian Overwatch to Viper 7. Move northeast toward the compound. I'll cover you. Martinez froze, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He saw her silhouette against the ridge. Impossible, but undeniable. For the first time. Respect flickered inside him. That's Monroe, he muttered, half to himself, half to the men beside him. She's leading us, shot by shot. The tide shifted. Insurgents who had pressed with confidence now faltered, scattering into cover. Coordinated volleys unraveled as she dismantled their command, one target at a time. Through her scope, she found the commander. Martinez tracked him just as Aria squeezed the trigger. A single round silenced his orders forever, his radio clattering beside his body. Panic spread like wildfire. Fighters who believed they held every advantage turned and fled into the mountains within minutes. The valley was silent except for the wind. 22 Americans still stood because of one woman and exactly 31 bullets. But Aria did not lower her rifle. Her eyes stayed sharp, scanning the horizon. She knew retreat wasn't always the end. Sometimes it was the setup for something worse. And in the distance, among the scattering fighters, a deliberate movement caught her eye. Not retreat, not panic, something else. She steadied her rifle, pulse quickening. The battle wasn't finished. Not yet. The first rays of dawn bled across the Korval Highlands as extraction helicopters thundered in. Dust spiraled across the valley floor, whipping through the ruins of a battlefield that had nearly become a graveyard. From the doors of the Chinooks, operators stared at the eastern ridge, once just rock and shadow, now etched into legend. Staff Sergeant Kyle Mercer, the man who had once dismissed her as dead weight, kept glancing upward. Hours ago, he had sneered at the very idea of that ridge. Now it was the reason he was alive. Aria Monroe descended with calm precision, her Barrett slung across her shoulder like it had always belonged there. Her uniform was torn, streaked with blood and mountain dust, but her expression was steady. The doubt that once haunted her eyes had been burned away, replaced by a quiet certainty that spoke louder than words. At Firebase Ironvale, the story spread faster than radio static. Soldiers spilled out of barracks. Drawn by the whispers, one sniper saved the entire team. The same voices that once mocked her patience at the range now fell into reverent silence. Mercer stepped forward first. Shame, respect, and a heavier gratitude lined his face. "Monroe," he faltered. "What you did, I've never seen anything like it. The precision, the discipline, we owe you everything." Before she could answer, Colonel David Ashford cut through the crowd. The compound stilled. The seasoned commander raised his right hand in a crisp salute, the kind reserved for acts that would live in history. Aria returned it. Spine straight, gaze unwavering. In that moment, the weight of years, every insult, every dismissal, every time she'd been told she wasn't enough lifted from her shoulders. Ashford's voice carried across the compound. 31 confirmed kills, most at ranges beyond 1,300 meters. 0 friendly casualties. What you accomplished will be studied for decades." He paused, letting the words strike like stone. "But more than that, you prove that courage and initiative can turn impossible into inevitable." Silence held. Then Aria spoke, low but steady. "I only did my duty, sir. Applied the training I was given when it mattered most." Ashford almost smiled, a rare expression that branded itself into memory. "No. What you did was redefine the limits for all of us, from that day forward." The name Shadow Walker vanished, not because it was forgotten, but because it no longer fit. She had not been a shadow trailing behind. She had become the light that cut through darkness, and with 31 shots in 43 minutes, Aria Monroe changed everything.